It's that time once again to have a look at the doom and gloom that is happening over on Conservative Home because, oh my word, um, it's bad. It's really, really bad over there, honestly. Hilarious. Don't get me wrong, hilarious. I got content for days if I just wanted to just solidly cover what's going on Conservative Home and the doom and gloom and the oh woe is us type things. You recently had Daniel Hanan do an entire blog, an attack blog on Nigel Farage, calling him the TikTok politician, saying how he's just out there really to go and ruin the general election for us. And yeah, he absolutely is. That's what he's doing. That's why he's there, Dan. Sorry, but that's why he's there. Because he wants to try and destroy you more. Partly because this will get into what could happen, as you've made me seen the title of the video. We have to ask a somewhat serious question because we have to go back to Canada. And we've done the video what happened in Canada 93, where their sort of Conservative Party got absolutely squeezed out and destroyed. But what happened in sort of the aftermath of that was eventually these two right-wing parties realized that in reality they were squeezing the right-wing vote, and eventually they found no option than to actually re-merge together to become one party again to, well, no longer split the right-wing vote. And we have to ask the question, could, because it's always, a potential possibility. Like I say, who knows what could happen, a month, 2 months from now, depending on how the general election shakes out and what else could happen during the campaign. Who knows at this point? Like I say, it is literally the new season of the thick of it out there. You're watching it in real life. Who knew? Who knew we'd have such a fascinating election? But I can guarantee you, someone at some point will write a comedy sketch about this general election. And honestly, it is going to be worth watching. I hope it's the creators of the thick of it, because even they could not write this good comedy material. Or if they can work with the stuff that's just ongoing, I can just imagine the reactions and verbal jousting from Malcolm Tucker that could come forth from such an awesome event happening. But before we get on into our main event of could a reform Tory or Tory-Reform merger happen, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. Of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one of today's link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as well, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much, everyone, for watching and giving your support. And like I say, you can help with the links down below, or you can click on the like and the share button. And of course, if you are new to the channel, click the subscribe button as well. As we say up in Yorkshire, on internet, you click like button, you get more videos. Hey! It's like Safe Style UK. You buy one, you get one. Honestly, you do not know how many people I have just triggered by quoting the adverts, because that used to play continuously up here for years. It haunts people's dreams still to this day. But anyway, back to it. So yes, could a reform Tory merger happen? Now, there is a possibility this could happen. Like I say, you look at the Canada example. Like I say, two right-wing parties realized that actually they were splitting the vote, that while they had their disagreements, they weren't 100 miles apart. They could, come together to reunite that sort of right-wing vote and be a bit more powerful in a, future Canadian Parliament. But it took them a lot of defeats at elections to actually realize that was actually a thing that they could do, reform together. And I've always said it, after this election, you are going to see an absolute ton of Tory infighting. Now, one of the possibilities that is really scaring Tories at the moment, and it's really scaring Will over on Conservative Home, is what happens if the Tories end up coming third. What if they get moved into that third position intake. And of course, he now, on this thing that we're going to look at, writes what could happen about a potential Tory merger. So, so he continues from here. So he says, trapped between the Scylla of David and the Charybdis of Farage, the blue and red walls would tumble. There would now be completely bereft and at war. But for a broader right, the situation wouldn't be so hopeless. A third of the country would have voted for right-wing parties, only to have now two centre-left knights of the realm now square across the commons. Voters would be appalled, and the centre could not hold. Here's the thing. We've seen the polls very recently. We did an entire video about what voters consider themselves as. 35% identified as centrist, 25% right, and I think it was 24% left wing. The centre would absolutely hold. This is once again really ignoring the fact of what the British public actually is, but also for the fact that when you look at polls, people overwhelmingly do want progressive things. So there you go. So the centre would absolutely hold in that if you did end up with that scenario of, Ed Davey and, of course, Keir Starmer, jousting between each other, of course, at Prime Minister's question times, of course, them being the main party of opposition and having that privilege to do so in that position, which is why, I'll say it again, why you want to completely and absolutely vote the Tories out. Do not take anything for granted. Go on Stop the Tories and make sure they lose, because the bigger a defeat, the worse it is going to be for them. So, back to this. So, it took several election defeats for Canada's Reform and Progressive Conservatives to actually realise that a divided right could be continually beaten. The then calls over here for a Reform Tory merger would then become louder. The next Conservative leader would be elected on a platform of admitting Farage into the party, even as Reform's only MP. He would at least demand a hostile takeover. And honestly, that's potentially what would happen as well. Farage would absolutely demand he would become leader somehow. If there was, it would be a very hostile takeover. Make no mistake, if the Conservatives are that badly defeated at a post-general election, if they realise that they are suffering defeat after defeat in other general elections, then it is very likely they would look at Reform and go, maybe we should, merge together. Once again, the Conservatives get it right where the left so often don't. That a divided right or even a divided left can continuously be beaten. But if you group up and group together, then you won't be beaten every time. Like I say, France gets this every single time. The socialists in France hate Macron with an absolute passion. But after their sort of, rounds and, potentially when their, candidate lose, at the next round, they go, right, we've either got Macron or we've got Le Pen. And let's face it, we don't want to let Le Pen in. We'll vote for Macron, even though we don't like him. We hate Marine Le Pen even more. I've said this I don't know how many times, but I wish like we were like that over here. Unfortunately, we're not. To my eternal chagrin on many occasions. But there you go. Anyway, we'll continue. You cannot obviously reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth. The only way for the anti-Farage Conservatives to actually avoid leading themselves to now his tender mercies this post-election is to win as many Tory seats as possible. Coming third in seats behind the Lib Dems, in votes behind Reform, would open the doors to madness, the final crisis of the right-wing entertainment industry. I love it. The final crisis of the right-wing entertainment industry. That, honestly, would be hilarious. But I would not be surprised if that came into place. What if the Tories were pushed into third, not only potentially behind by the Lib Dems, or even by Reform? That, ladies and gentlemen, does and would set the cat amongst the pigeons, as they say. But anyway, we'll continue with this. Dread him, run from him. Farage arrives all the same. Fun isn't something one considers when ushering in a Labour landslide, but it does put a smile on his face. When the next government's grotesque in tray and space for radical right alternatives will now only grow larger. Even if he doesn't actually become leader of the opposition, Farage will remain a single focus point for our continuing continental politics. All in all, it was rather grim reading for Downing Street this morning. At least Sunak has this evening's debate to try and stir things up with a little. I'll be watching from behind the sofa. And of course, the reaction to the debate on Conservative Home wasn't exactly overwhelmingly positive. So we'll see here. It is, of course, one of those eternal, real questions. Could a Tory reform happen? I think there's a number of things would actually have to happen for that to enable. You would have to see the Tories beaten so soundly, so firmly into third, even fourth place in some places that they realise that they can't win. They would not obviously, unite with reform straight away, but voices would grow louder. And of course, it would take a few elections, maybe local elections, maybe even more general elections for them to realise, oh, actually, maybe we now have to have this Tory reform merger. So maybe like 2 decades from now, maybe they realize, well, actually, we're just splitting the right vote at this point. Maybe it's time we got together. But as I said before, during that time, there's a lot of possibilities we can get done. So I'll keep on saying it because I think it's more truer now than ever. Vote the Tories out. Go on, stop the Tories. Look at what your tactical voting is and vote them out, because the bigger a defeat they suffer, the more room this gives us to get a lot of progressive things done in the future. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.